Hi again. So this is Alana Campbell from You Have a Life Plan and Support Their Light, a service for parents with sensitive kids. And I'm just picking up where I left off, going through my Autism Binder with some updates and some highlights. And I was talking about how figuring out how to do math, like math is just something we need to figure out, just like birthing is something we need to figure out. And it's nothing to be anxious about. And, you know, in school, they have all these videos about anxiety about math, especially about girls and all this stuff. And it's just, you know, preempting that it's going to be difficult. And it's very similar to birth, you know, worrying that birth is going to be so difficult and having to have all these procedures in place in order to make it easier. There's a state in the US, I can't remember which one, and I don't want to guess the wrong one, where for 15 years, every child was pulled out with a forceps because that's how they decided they were going to do things. And then this state, the people who live there joke that they're a little bit less smart than other states because of this process. And so it's just kind of like, you know, we're always trying to do these things en masse to all children. And, you know, math is something we can figure out. Birth is something we can figure out. It's not something you can plan. People do it differently. And so I just wanted to draw that parallel that I see. Okay. Now, if we go to other methods within Esogetic Medicine, I find these really handy, these crystals. So I'll just show you. They're just like little tiny glass crystals here. So, and they're in various different colors, and they have the earth hologram on them. You probably can't see that very well, and they're glass, but I don't know how breakable they are because they're a bit thick. And so basically, if we were to go back to that other treatment where you saw on the head, there was those 4 colors. Like I said, those are usually done in brainwave frequencies and then with colored light, which you can do, but not the brainwaves for kids. But you could also do treatments with these crystals instead. So every time you see a brainwave treatment, you could do it with the crystals instead. This is a treatment using the gray crystals. So there's 3 shades of gray, and it helps them center and kind of find themselves. All of Esogetic Medicine is helping people process all this information that is running through us, emotional information and everything. That also means processing all the garbage out of our cells, because a lot of our early life experiences are stored cellularly because our brain actually isn't set up to store anything yet. So it's about processing this stuff out. And then here, this is showing the gold and silver crystals. So where the elemental crystals kind of help things kind of move properly, the gold and silver balances the yin yang, or the overactive and the underactive. So like balancing both sides of the brain. When you have like the middle of the brain is not communicating back and forth, we can do all these kinds of balancing things. So these are kind of easy things because you can literally stick these in your kid's socks and hold the other one on top of the head. And I think for kids who are struggling, the more tools you have that you can discover that help them, that they can go to and help themselves, the better. And so RestoreChi works like that too. So like if you were to take your child to see Master Yan, then they would go home with a speaker, and they can put the speaker on whenever they need to. So one of the autistic childs literally asks for the speaker. Actually, several of them ask for their speaker quite a lot to whatever, it helps them sleep, or whatever they describe, they just feel better if they have it. And so another thing that I speak to in one of the articles, like one of the kids was like rubbing his hand repeatedly, and that's because his yin yang wasn't balanced, and he was trying to do this, or stimming, you know, in his private area, trying to move the yin yang, but he can't. Like, he's trying, but he can't. And so Master Yan balances that because he has the ability to do that. And then these kids aren't repeatedly going, I'm trying to get stuff there. So one of Master Yan's students, Kevin, says all of these things these kids are doing are showing us where their imbalances are so that we can help them. And that is also reflected in other articles, the one about the visual system, which is also in my binder. Okay. So these are other esogetic treatments that I find very kid-friendly. So this one here is like a flashlight with these colored caps. So here's the flashlight here, and you just replace the cap. So I'm going to start from the bottom because I've been starting from the top before. So like here, you would treat this bottom half of the brain. So this is like the stem instinctual brain with blue, and that will calm it down. And then you can move up to yellow. And so treat this mid brain, which is the limbic emotional brain, social brain with yellow, which helps it flow better. And then we treat the top with red. So here we're activating that cortical structure where we can think and, change our mind, not do that instinctual behavior and let our emotions run us. And obviously there's other areas on the face, like the zone of power and all this, information in the ears and stuff like that. And so I'm not going to go through all of them because I don't know them off the top of my head, but you could treat the whole face. And what that would do is it encourages people to use their face to problem solve, to solve conflicts. This is generally used for people who in the past, no matter what they did, they couldn't get out of their situation. So they stopped using their face, and so they stopped being pro-social. So that may not be the case with autistic children, or it may be, I don't know, but we can use this to kind of bring that face back online so that the face gives information to the whole body and the body gives information through the face. So it's helping people feel safe and able to communicate their needs. So that's that. And there's other treatments that use this flat light, which is really easy to use and hopefully less breakable than glass. And then these are sound programs. And so basically it's taking the frequencies of color and turning it into the frequencies of sound. It's classical music, and you just listen to it until you get annoyed by it. So you just want to touch the issue and then turn it off. So there's headache, stress relief, immune, insomnia, concentration, motivation. So my son could use some of that motivation because he has issues like getting going. Some kids can benefit from concentration, so that helps them focus. And this body, soul, spirit is really good for any kind of pain, emotional pain, physical pain, just moving it through all the layers. And this is just another example of how like math is so creative and so important. Like they're using math to do color and to do sound. Like to block kids' ability to do math because you're forcing them through just one way is really sad, because math is really fun when you can like figure out, oh my God, there's this neat little pattern I can do. And like we teach so many tricks now that kids are not even getting that chance to figure it out. Just like kids are not even getting the chance to figure out how to be birthed. And I know there are always circumstances that kids have to be birthed a certain way. And I think those, just like I said, that prenatal period, sometimes it's like it's intended that way because that gives the child the life they're looking for. It gives the parent, the child that's going to teach them what they need to learn. Like there are no accidents, but also there's ways to undo these things that do some damage. Okay. And so let me see. I hope I have this book here because I had to move places and I don't see it. It's upstairs. Okay. Just 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So this book, I'm just going to read a few things to you because it's really fascinating. It's a book written by a doctor who works with patients who have had motor vehicle accidents, and then they have whiplash with all kinds of symptoms. And he's been looking into like, these motor vehicle accidents are really minor. How come they have such severe outcomes that are delayed? And then he's looking at the link between it's not just physical, it's actually trauma. And it's not just the trauma of that time. It's, what happened to the life beforehand. So anyways, without further ado, let me read you some quotes from this book. So it says, animals who are kept in captivity, who are then released to the wild, if they do not go through a period of shaking, they will usually die after release. That's one thing. So basically, being in a cage is the freeze state in the fight, flight, or freeze. And if they don't shake that off, that gets stored in their body and it causes a lot of problems. But I think you'll get to the point as I read more quotes. So it says, the acculturation of the human species might inhibit instinctual capability to flee or defend oneself under stress. The proximity and cultural interdependence inhibits the natural discharge of this autonomic freeze energy. And our purpose for maintaining order may also instinctually create a low level of help. Our desire to maintain order may intrinsically create a low level state of helplessness. We are in a cultural cage, and this is the prevalence of all these trauma symptoms we're seeing. So that, again, just goes to show the way we live is actually causing all these stress and trauma issues in adults and kids. And then it speaks to a condition called railroad spine. So this is basically when trains first came out, people were having all these pains, and they said they were psychoneuroses. But this guy alludes to, we were never meant to go that fast as a train, and now we're going as fast as cars. And so railroad spine has now been replaced with whiplash. We are going too fast. And so that's that quote. And then here he says, trauma is caused by the suppression of the stereotyped autonomic somatic discharge after recovery from a state of freeze. And he says, trauma is basically a corruption of perception through kindled somatic procedural memory. So basically, that's what I was trying to allude to before. When we can't let go of what happened to us, we were in that freeze state and we weren't allowed to emote what was going on, then it gets stuck in procedural memory, which is basically, how to ride a bike. We don't have to think about it. How to drive a car. We don't have to think about it. So how to be in this state of, I am so stressed out because I just was forced to freeze all day. That gets backed up, like being constipated with all this stress. And we need to help these kids relieve it. And this book speaks to all different brain areas that you can treat to kind of help move that through. And Esogetics has methods to treat all these brain areas. And also, I'm sure Master Yan's going to figure it out too. Okay, so here it says, this is very pertinent to my own family. It says a sustained freeze or dissociation is associated with low blood pressure and dizziness and fainting, acid reflux or any kind of reflux, irritable bowel, and gut-based problems. And so I'm going to have to pause. I'll be back. Hi again. Okay, so going back to what I just read and saying that was very pertinent to me and my experience. So I have low blood pressure. My children have low blood pressure. When I was pregnant with them, my son, because boys have lower blood pressure than girls, at least in utero, they thought he was non-viable because his blood pressure was so low. And they thought my daughter was a boy because her blood pressure was matching in the boy range, but that was also inaccurate. So on top of myself and my children, my mother and her mother have low blood pressure. And if you look at this from a metaphysical standpoint, low blood pressure implies that these are people who don't really want to be here. But now when science ties it to people in a sustained freeze or in dissociation, these are people who have had so much trauma and dissociation is like not really being here. So it's interesting that the science is now confirming what was brought through metaphysically. And also it shows that this is a generational trauma. So generationally, through at least 4 generations, we have had this sustained freeze going on. It's probably longer back than that. I just don't know the state of my great-grandmother's blood pressure. And so we are healing things that happened long ago and have continued to happen. And I think that's really cool that we can see these patterns. And it's not just through blood pressure. Like you could have arthritis running through the family, skin conditions running through the family, who knows what else. And we may say, oh, well, that's just genetic, but it's not. It's our body epigenetically changes based on our experience to pass it on to the young that this is a scary place and be prepared and set yourself up for fight, flight, or freeze. And so that's what's going on, or at least that's a theory. Okay, so I don't know if I spoke to, because I've done this recording so many times and had technical and kid issues, that I don't know if I spoke to this. So I do want to speak to this. I spoke to my children's personal prenatal birth story, but children born via C-section also, I'm sorry if this is a repeat, but they may not feel safe because they were in a safe place and then they got pulled out suddenly. And so, there's all kinds of different ways that we could have this experience, and then there's ways that we can correct what happened. So I just wanted to speak to that. Okay, and then here, another quote. It speaks to a child who was hit by lightning, and his hair would stand up on ends every time he was scared. And actually those individual hair fibers, the tiny muscles that causes them to rise up, that is also procedural memory. So he has this backlog of, oh my God, I'm going to react to this lightning again and again every time he's scared. And in 2 EMDR sessions, so those are trauma sessions that, are using the movement of the eyes. I haven't tried it. I've heard some people get great results and some people really don't like it. So it's a personal choice what way you want to undo your trauma. But 2 sessions, this tendency disappeared and his PTSD symptoms disappeared. So that procedural memory in the muscles can be cleared. And I put that out there because these things that happen to us can be, some of them can be corrected, or at the very least, we can help people find ways to live that give them more peace. We don't have to do life the hard way all the time or at all. And then just a little quote from the back of this book. It says, the author understands the effects of trauma to be a grip on the autonomic nervous system, which alters blood flow, hormonal secretions, and neurotransmitter balances in the brain. This lasting disturbance underlies the majority of diseases listed in the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual, in addition to a large number of baffling medical conditions. So I just wanted to share that a lot of these things our kids have are in the DSM. And so we can do the best that we can to undo or to change the life circumstance so that they're not suffering as much as they are. And then just to circle back to Master Yan, again, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. So when he first saw my son, he said, I'm so glad you brought him in to see me, because he was on the verge of a depression because he had so much garbage in him. He said to my son, I bet it's scary to sleep. And he's like, yes, I'm afraid I'm going to die when I sleep. And so he was able to clear that out. And my son is just like, I like going to see him because he told me things about myself that I couldn't put words to. I couldn't even, how could he even know them? And then my middle child calls him a ghost because he can go into your body and change things. But it was night and day. Like, my daughter was afraid to go in. And then after this treatment of clearing that garbage, the congestion between her eyes, she said, you know what? I'm confident. I want to go down to the store next door and order an ice cream for my whole family. And she was so proud of herself. And she said, Mommy, you go to the car. I'll stay here. And she didn't have that separation anxiety. Unfortunately, she couldn't sustain that state because, Master Yan's still trying to figure this out, and we're still trying to figure it out. But that's the thing. Like, if you can see that somebody can shift to a better way of being, and then it's just a way of figuring out how do we sustain that, like, it just shows you that something is possible. Even with that mother who wrote the testimonial, like, her child had such a big improvement, but then he returned to his life and to the regular things that he does, and he lost part of it or all of it. I'm not sure. And so, it's just about saying, okay, we can get there, but we need to figure out how do we shift our life to maintain it if that is our choice to do so. And this is part of living and part of growing up. And so the reason why I would suggest seeing Master Yan is he is here, I would say 2 to 4 times a year for about a month, and he sees clients, and then he's back in China. And you can use RestoreChi tracks also. Like, I have written many articles, and I'll put my RestoreChi page up. And I guess an article that lists a lot of old articles which were lost. You can use RestoreChi for all kinds of things. And so you can see him, and he can do these big shifts in person. And then you can use RestoreChi to kind of fix the little things along the way, or maintain the little things along the way, because, like, we all do things we're not supposed to do, eat things we shouldn't, don't wear a coat when we should go outside. So we can fix those things with RestoreChi to kind of maintain ourselves as we go. And then when Master Yan comes in, he can do these big shifts. So, like, I had neck and head issues that I couldn't, like, no chiro could clear it. I did go away for a couple of days, and it went away, and then I came back to my life, and it just was constant. And he saw that I had too much yang at the back, and so he just kind of fixed that. And I didn't really notice a difference at the time, but I haven't complained about those debilitating neck or head issues. I get the odd dizziness, which I can fix with Esogetic. So it's just basically take a load off so that you can fix the little things. And then when he comes back, see what he knows and take another load off. So I bring my family to see him. I'm going to take my youngest to see him for the first time since she was in utero. So he's worked on her since she was in utero, but she's now turning 4, and he hasn't seen her in a few years because it's challenging to bring a little kid in. But because it's challenging is why I want him to see her, because maybe she's carrying stuff that is making life harder, and maybe taking some of that stuff off will make life easier. So I hope this is helpful, and you can reach out to me if you have any questions. Okay, thanks. Bye.